Hi, my name's Londe Yusuf.
And my name is Reggie Williams.
And we're the co-founders of Black Film Space. Black Film Space is a grassroots organization dedicated to enhancing the skill sets of Black filmmakers and building a community of creatives. We host events such as screenwriting workshops, panels, mixers, and other events that are designed to support Black content creators.
In the next episode of the Black Film Space podcast, we interview Tamika Miller. Tamika is a director who has over 15 years of experience in commercials. In 2018, she was a Commercial Directors Diversity Program Fellow, and recently she directed a BET movie entitled Back to the Good Life that starred Kyla Pratt. We talk with Tamika about breaking into commercial directing, spec spots, branding, and much more. And now, on to our interview. All right, Tamika, thank you for joining the Black Film Space podcast.
Oh, so great to be with you. Thank you for having me, Reggie.
Of course. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. It's a beautiful, sunny Southern California morning, so I can't complain. It's really nice.
Awesome. So can you explain to us what a typical path for breaking into commercial directing and what was your journey like?
Sure. I have to say, breaking into commercial directing, there is no typical path. Directors come to it in different ways. I came into it because I got my start working in commercials as a production assistant and then moving up to production coordinating, production supervising, and then line producing. So for me, my entree into Hollywood, if you will, or the entertainment industry was working in commercials right out of college. And working in commercials became my film school. So I learned a lot. I got to watch and witness a lot of phenomenal directors do their thing. Mm-hmm. In fact, my very first job in Hollywood was working as a production assistant on an Antoine Fuqua commercial way back in the day. I'm dating myself a bit, but this was mid-90s, and it was for a Toyota commercial starring Christian Slater. And I, at the time, was working freelance, and I've been freelance my entire career. I was working freelance at Propaganda Films, which at the time was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, music video and commercial production companies. And a lot of notable directors like Spike Jonze, David Fincher, Michael Bay, Antoine Fuqua, obviously, Dominic West, came out of Propaganda. And they were doing a lot of music videos at the time. And for a lot of, I think, directors during that time, their path was having gotten started in music videos, when music videos was king and there was a lot of money in music videos. And then they transitioned into directing commercials. I was working behind the scenes in production and absorbing everything I could, but I was always writing. I was always a creative. I knew that I wanted to write and direct. And so eventually I started directing my own spec spots, my own commercial spec spots. And spec spots are commercials, projects that you essentially fund yourself, and you get people to help you produce it. And you choose whatever brand you want to highlight. And you basically do it yourself. And it's a means for you to hone your craft as a director, but it's also a means to get seen as a director, to sort of build your reel. And I did some spec spots, and then that were seen. They weren't great, to be honest. In the beginning, they were not great, but I was learning, definitely learning. And from doing spec spots to eventually writing and directing my own narrative work in terms of short films, more and more I I was seen as a director.
Mm-hmm.
And that eventually got the attention of some of the gatekeepers. The fact that I was directing, moved into the narrative space, and was having some success in directing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how did you get to the first commercial that you directed?
The first commercial I was commissioned or paid to direct was a couple of Lifetime commercials for Lifetime TV. And they came to me through an old friend of mine who I honestly hadn't spoken to in probably a decade. And she knew that I was directing. She saw my social media footprint and one day just hit me up and said, Lifetime TV is looking for a director to direct 2 or 3 commercials. And they're looking for a woman of color, and I see you're doing your thing. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, of course. Nice. So that was my first time being offered to direct commercials for broadcast that I was paid to do. And that was essentially from someone seeing me, just seeing that I was doing the work and I was clearly capable. And the rest is history.
Okay. What skill sets as a narrative director do you apply as a commercial director?
I have to say that my experience having worked on the production end of commercials and just being in the world of commercials my entire career is the thing that really led to my success as a narrative director. One thing that commercials taught me early on was the importance of preparation. In commercials, whenever we are pitching for a job, when we're trying to secure a commercial, we have to do a treatment, which is essentially a visual deck. Mm-hmm. In the narrative space, we may call it a lookbook or a mood board. And in the commercial space, visual treatments are what I consider works of art. I mean, mm-hmm. They can probably be hanging in a museum somewhere. They can be very, very instrumental in helping you secure a job. And so what commercials taught me is how to think through the entire creative process. And what I mean by that is, who are my actors? What kind of actors am I looking for in terms of a look? What kind of performances that I can look to, that I want to put in this visual presentation to help convey my vision for this commercial. Mm-hmm. And so because of that training in commercials, I do that for every project that I am developing. So if I've written a pilot script for a TV series, or I've written a feature script for film, I always do a pretty extensive visual treatment to further sort of hone in on my own vision as a creative, as a director, first and foremost. And also visual treatments are key, are essential, or very, very helpful, we'll say, at the very least, in helping other creatives that I've hired, whether it's production designer, costume designer, or cinematographer. It helps convey my vision to the department heads. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's a great tool, and preparation for sure is the thing that commercials has taught me, and that has helped led to my success in the narrative space.
Okay. But are there any differences, or what are the differences between directing narrative, music videos, and commercials?
Well, the difference. Well, I've done a handful of music videos, not many. So I'll speak more to the narrative versus commercial space, if I could. You know, with the narrative space, the short films that I've directed, I also wrote. So I'm coming to the project very, with an intimate knowledge of the characters because they came out of my own head. And so in writing, I'm also thinking about the actors and the performances and who can play these roles. I've since directed content. For example, I directed a TV movie earlier this year, and where that was a script that I didn't write. So that was something I had to take, and I had to, infuse my own vision into to help elevate the piece. And so with narrative directing, there's hopefully more preparation that you have as a director, whether it's a rehearsal process, and just really getting to or table reading, sort of the initial steps that you take before you actually get on set. There's a little bit more of a pre-process in narrative filmmaking, whereas in commercials are fast. They're fast. I mean, you're in and out. Depending on how many shoot days you have, it's 2 or 3 weeks you're on that project.
Wow.
Whereas with the narrative piece, you're on it for a lot longer, weeks, and depending on the film, months, So commercials are very quick. You're casting, you hire your actors, and they come in, and the adjustments are I think I don't know if they would be different in terms of actor adjustments, but there's just a different timing, a different pacing with commercials than there are in the narrative space. Because commercials are very, you're fast, you're in and you're out. So those are two distinctions. And then also too, with narrative work as a director, I am very much involved in the post process in terms of the editorial and really shaping the overall look of the film. Whereas in commercials, once we shoot and get it all in the can, the advertising agency, they've hired typically an editor who sits with the agency to help implement their vision. So as a director, I have a say, I have an opinion, but at the end of the day, it's the ad agency who takes the elements and create the spot that they want, that they've been looking for.
It seems like the ad agency has a lot of say into how the commercial is going to look and stuff. Like, how much creativity and freedom do commercial directors typically have?
I think that you have to be mindful that when you get a board from an ad agency, they've sat with this board. You're getting it for the first time, but they've, a lot of times they've done focus groups. They've really vetted the board. They've gotten the buy-in from their client, so there's this whole process that's happened before you even get your hands on the board. So as a director, I'm not trying to come in and rewrite their creative. I definitely have thoughts and opinions, and I am all about, and every commercial director, our goal is to elevate the creative. So I can articulate things that perhaps the creatives weren't thinking of to help elevate in terms of casting, in terms of location, etc. So yes, I mean, there's some control for sure that commercial directors have, but we also always have to be mindful that a lot of time and energy has gone into this creative from the ad agency, and they've sold their client on it. And so we don't want to, as a director, I never want to disrupt. I want to collaborate, and I want to, relay my own vision and elevate the piece. So yeah, I have an opinion, I have a say, and the agency can run with it, or they can choose not to. But we're talking. We're always talking, and it's definitely a collaborative process.
Okay. So how do commercial directors typically find work? Is it through an agent, or how does that work?
Well, commercial directors there are two kinds of commercial directors. There are independent directors, and I'm an independent director, which means that I'm not signed to a commercial production company. And then there are directors who are signed, which means that they are on a roster, they are represented by a production company. And so with a signed director who's represented by a production company, they are doing commercials that trickle through that production company. That production company has an exec producer, and that production company also has what's called a sales rep. And sales reps work for production companies, and their job is to basically sell the director's work, if you will, to ad agencies. So when sales reps get notice that there's a particular board or an ad agency is looking for a particular director, maybe who's done a lot of car work or who's worked with kids or what have you, that respective sales rep will submit that director that's repped at that production company. For someone like myself, who is an independent director, I'm getting calls from all over. So there are a lot of different production companies, smaller production companies, who don't have a roster of directors, if you will, but basically sort of source out independent directors like myself to secure jobs. So I may get, a call from a production company from London, or as well as obviously the US. So there are two different sort of schools of thought around being independent and being at a production company. For independent directors, some directors believe that, wow, I actually have more freedom. I have more, well, freedom is probably not the right word, but definitely more opportunities, if you will, to work versus maybe being at a production company where they may feel a little constricted. But then the other side of that is for directors who are with a production company, they have a staff, they have an executive producer and a sales rep whose goal it is to get them work, so that kind of support is very valuable as well, so that's the difference. So there's no agent per se, but if you're with a production company, essentially your executive producer and ultimately your sales representative are your agent, if you will.
Which area do you prefer? Do you prefer being independent like you are now, or are you looking to join a roster?
I'd like to join a roster at some point. Having come from commercials, having worked in it on the production end for such a long time, I definitely see the benefit. While I'm independent right now, I definitely am open to being rostered. But it really needs to be the right fit. Yeah. So I don't want to be rostered or signed at a production company just to say I'm signed at a production company. It really needs to be the right fit for me. And I think any director you speak to, commercial director, would probably say the same. It's really about the right fit.
Can you elaborate more on like what the right fit means, whether it's with you or just generally with directors?
Look, I think at the end of the day, it's about the work. It's about getting the work. In this day and age, well, let me put it this way: in the old days, in the older days, it was all about being signed at a commercial production company. That's the way that you were going to get work. But nowadays, the terrain is so different now that there are a lot of independent directors doing content, and they're pretty successful. So when I say the commercial production company needs to be a right fit, for me personally, it's like, okay, who else is on the roster? What other directors on the roster? What kind of work is that production company doing? That matters as well, because different production companies are doing different kind of work. So that's something that I'm looking at. I also, who is the executive producer? Because as a director at a production company, I'm also working closely with an executive producer as well. And so all those things matter, to me personally. It's like what kind of content you're doing, what's sort of the caliber of commercial work you're doing, that all matters.
Okay. How does one, let's say somebody in my position, join one of these rosters? Like, what's the path to joining a roster?
I'll put it this way: at the end of the day, as a director, it's about you. If you're looking to be signed at a commercial production company, it's about you having the work.
Yeah.
Right. So it's, a production company wants to be able to sell you, if you will, to sort of use that word, to sell you. And the way that they are able to sell you, i.e. sell your work, to an ad agency, is for you to have a good body of work. So it's not so easy where you just, you apply and you join a production company. That's not how it works. You have to have the body of work. So, maybe you have, if you're a newer director, say you've done some spec spots and they're really good, but you've been building your reel and really honing your craft, and say you have 5 or 6, spots that you feel really great about, then as a director, then you should shop around your reel. You should reach out to different production companies, maybe production companies whose directors that you like, whose work that you like, maybe some smaller production companies. And the idea is to get your work seen, and if it's good, if there's something there, then take a meeting with with the respective executive producer, and see, what they're looking for, get their feedback on your work. I mean, if your work is great, then you're gonna, and if you want to be on a roster, you want to be signed at a commercial production company, then you will be. You will be. I mean, there's some other factors at play as well. I mean, in terms of the production company, how many directors are on their roster? If they have 20 directors on their roster and they're trying to get work for all 20 of those directors, then that may not be the right commercial production company for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then go to a smaller company that maybe they have 7, 6 directors, So those are all the things that as a commercial director I'd consider, and when I'm going to a production company to with the hopes or the desire potentially to be signed by them.
Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate more on creating spec spots and what the benefit of doing it?
If you're looking to direct in the commercial space, look, no one's gonna hand you, a bunch of money and say, direct this for me, and so spec spots are basically a means by which you're able to build your reel and show people what your aesthetic is as a creative, as a director. So a spec spot is typically a commercial. It could be 30 seconds. It could be a longer format, 60 seconds, where you're essentially financing yourself, you're shooting yourself, you're asking friends for favors. Hey, come help me out. Where you are actually coming up with the creative for a brand of your choosing. So, whatever brand you want to highlight, and you're going out and you're shooting the spec spot. And no one knows, or no one should know, I'll say this, when that spec spot is actually on your reel, it should be so good that no one knows that it wasn't actually, that you weren't actually a director for hire for it, So that's what spec spots do. They allow you to create content, build your reel, and showcase your talent, so you can essentially ultimately get paid to do it.
Yeah. So are there any other avenues for spec spots outside of like just sending it to production companies and putting it on your reel?
Absolutely. You want to get obviously your work seen, and one avenue nowadays, which wasn't an avenue in the past, are film festivals. A lot of film festivals now have commercial competitions, whereas in the past it was solely short narrative or feature narrative or documentary competitions. Now there are even shorter format music video and commercial competitions. So as a director, if I've done a spec spot, I want to get it seen. Sure, I can post it on my social media platforms, but I also want to submit it to different film festivals, and you can go to, one of the film festival platforms. I know like there's one called filmfreeway.com. And I think you can even type in the search box, commercials and a list of film festivals that have commercial competitions will come up. And I think that's really valuable, because it's just another way to be seen, and if that spec spot does well, that's great publicity for you.
Yeah.
That's great publicity. And, my opinion is, if you can get publicity around your work and you're publicizing that on your social media and, just sort of doing your own PR, like that's a great thing. And that is just something else that can get the attention of the gatekeepers, of the executive producers at production companies, or sales reps, so that's definitely something I would do. I would definitely get my work out to some of these film festivals. Yeah.
What do you think of websites like mofilm.com where you're pitching to companies, or websites where you win prize money?
Yeah, I think there's probably value to MoFilm, and there's another website, Tongle as well. I know back in the a few years ago they were pretty hot, and there were directors I knew, up and coming directors, who would definitely go to those sites and write pitches on different briefs. I don't know today how valuable those websites are, but I think it's definitely worth looking at. I know a director friend of mine years ago actually wrote a concept based on a brief and for MoFilm, and they chose his pitch, and he was given money to do it. I think, I don't know, maybe $10,000 to shoot this commercial. So that was a great look for him, that definitely got him some attention. And so, yeah, I think I think there's value in taking a look at those things for sure, but, the whole thing about, a spec spot, again, there's no one way to approach creating content. Ideally, yes, if someone's going to give you money to do it, then that's what you want. But, in this day and age where we can shoot, a lot of us have cameras, when we can edit, a lot of us know how to edit or can learn to edit or can tap a friend who can edit. We can create content fairly quickly and more easily than we could in the past. And with that, I would say, if you're going to create, direct, produce a spec spot, don't do one spec spot. Mm-hmm. Like, maximize your time and your resources. Like, really think through, okay, my friends are cool to come on to help me, for 2 days on a weekend. How can I get 3 spec spots out of this? Maybe one is dialogue driven, maybe one isn't. Maybe one is just, fast paced, beautiful imagery, with a great track underneath. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I would say any director who's looking to do a spec spot, try to do more than one. Try to do 3, actually, because it's, at the end of the day, look, you're trying to build your reel, and any way you can maximize your resources and any help that you're getting, you should maximize.
You know how to spell Tongal?
Yes, Tongal is Tongal.
Okay. So what's the process for creating a pitch for a commercial compared to a pitch for a narrative film?
Well, on commercials, if I'm in the mix to pitch on a commercial, what typically happens in that whole process, an ad agency essentially is sent a bunch of different reels, a bunch of directors' reels from sales reps, et cetera. And they will narrow the director pool down to usually 3 directors. So it is very selective. 3 directors at 3 different production companies, essentially, or not. It could be an independent director as well, that they want that director to pitch on. And they're choosing that director based on their work, what they've done in the past. So as a director, if I'm chosen to pitch on that board, I will hop on a creative call with the ad agency to talk about, the spot, really what they're endeavoring to do. But I'm also coming to that call with my own vision, on how to elevate the piece, my own ideas. Mm-hmm. And my goal is to really sort of always to complement what they already have, but then to push it a little bit, to have them sort of think about things that perhaps they didn't think about within the parameters of the creative. So once I get off that creative call, then I go back and I put my treatment together, which is, again, this sort of deck of visuals and copy and, text of what my vision is, what the aesthetic is, what the casting's going to be about, locations, etc. And while I'm doing that, my executive producer simultaneously is putting together a budget on what it will cost to actually produce this commercial. So that's the process, and the goal obviously is to seal the deal, is to get, that they love my creative vision. They love my treatment. We had a great creative call. and they're like, yeah, we want Tamika, you know, the budget is where it needs to be. And so that's the process in terms of, you know, booking a commercial. On the narrative side, very different side, you know. Yeah, I mean, it really depends on whether or not a script is coming to you, you know, that someone else has written. Just as my own example, the TV movie that I directed earlier this year, versus a script that I've written. And, you know, I have a couple of feature scripts that's out there right now. So, you know, the process is very different, you know, definitely in a indie narrative space. You know, I have a feature film right now that Wanda Sykes is attached to, right, in her very first dramatic role. And I'm super excited about it. You know, and it's, you know, it's not a studio film, it's an indie film. So the process is, you know, trying to secure that bag, if you will, you know, trying to get the money to actually produce it, versus in commercials, that money is coming to me, you know. So that's just one very distinct difference in the two worlds, essentially.
Okay. Can you give us some basic tips on honing your brand if you're a new commercial director, or you're someone who's working on spec spots? Like, how does one hone and define a brand? There's some basic tips.
Absolutely. You know, as creatives, as directors, we want, oftentimes, well, always, I think we want to be able to convey that we can do anything, right? We can do comedy, we can do a thriller, we can do action. You know, we you know, we're multi-dimensional, multifaceted, you know, visionaries. So we want to be able to show that we can do it all. But in commercials, the opposite is the case. In commercials, ad agencies hire you because they see in your work that you can do one thing. You know, you may have other things on your reel, you know, or things on your reel or in your portfolio that you'll pull out when you need to, depending on what that specific board is from the agency. But if you are, you know, a new director and you're building your reel and you're, you know, going to do some spec spots, my advice to you is don't be all over the place, you know, in a good way. Like, ideally, we want to be able to show that we can do it all, but hone in on what your aesthetic is. So if you like to do sort of docu-style, handheld, you know, content, then do spec spots, you know, 2 or 3 spec spots in that vein. You know, if you are doing, you know, more sort of comedy or working with children or kids or families, you know, then do spec spots in that vein, you know. So, because at the end of the day, ad agencies, they want to be sold on, look, you're the best director to tell this particular story, you know. So if you're a car director, like if you're directing car commercials, you know, and an ad agency is doing a spot for, you know, Toyota, they're seeking out the directors who've done car commercials. They're less likely to seek out the director who hasn't, you know? So, so that would be my advice to a director who is looking to build a reel and doing spec spots, to really, you know, really hone in on what they want their brand to be, which isn't to say don't do other stuff, but have them in your back pocket. So when another opportunity comes up, you have it, but definitely have, you know, 3 or so spots that have a similar appeal going on with it. So that would be my advice.
How would you define your brand?
My brand, well, there are a couple of things going on with me, but my brand right now is definitely family, kids, sort of lifestyle content. So that's sort of the vein that I'm in now, and and there are directors where their brand evolves. It can definitely evolve. Just as an example, I'm getting a lot of boards coming my way that say are for a car commercial. I've not done any car commercials, but yet a lot of car commercials nowadays aren't just about running footage, and then you see like the fleet of cars, with the city in the backdrop. Car commercials now have more of a lifestyle feel, or lifestyle storytelling to them. So you may see a family, it's about telling a story. It's really the stories are really about this family interacting maybe in the car. We're selling the car, but the story is the family, and that car becomes a part of their family. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So even in me saying that, again, sort of painting that picture now, it's like, it's not just about the technical, what the car has to offer, but it's like, how does that car make you feel? Yeah. So that's just a one example of how, advertising has evolved, and so for a director like myself, who, doesn't have a ton of car commercials on her reel, but I have, something on my reel that shows kids or shows, a family or a couple, like that could be my entree into securing that job.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed over the last probably 5 to 10 years is how cinematic a lot of these commercials have become. I'm like, wow, this looks like a movie. Like, this is amazing. Like, it makes me really enjoy watching Like, I generally just like watching commercials nowadays.
Because cinema, when we watch films, it's there's a different aesthetic, that is happening, that can happen, that historically has happened. And so when we bring that to the commercial space, it has a different feel tone, it has just a different tonality, and we feel a certain way, that we perhaps haven't felt in the past while watching commercials. So absolutely.
Yeah. How would you define your brand aesthetically? Are there certain color tones or lighting styles? Like, is there a certain way that your commercials look specifically when it comes to aesthetics?
It really depends on the product, the brand. You know what I mean? So it comes down to what I'm helping to sell. So if I'm doing something that I'm just trying to think of a product, a brand that has I don't know, say Apple, say an Apple commercial. When we typically see Apple commercials, they are, they can be upbeat, they can be, cinematically beautiful. There's nothing dark or ominous about an Apple spot, right? So it really depends on the product, because every brand, every product is sort of is a character in itself, if you will. If I'm doing a toy commercial, with kids, there's, it's going to be bright, it's going to be, light, it's not going to be cinematic in the way that we think of of a film, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a different aesthetic. I currently have in my reel an Amazon spot that is what I consider sort of a very Western spot, Westerness in terms of Western advertising. You know, it's bright, it's light, it's comedic. You know, that's the aesthetic I was going for. That's the aesthetic that we accomplished. But then I also have something on my director's reel that, like, I have a Doritos spot that's dancing, that's darker, you know, that you know, it has a comedic bend in it, but it has a different aesthetic. So it just really depends. It depends on the brand, you know.
Okay. What do you like about directing commercials?
One thing I like about directing commercials is that they're fast, that you are in and you're out, you know, and, you know, again, depending on how many shoot days there are, you know, I can be in and out in 3 weeks, you know, and so from pre-production to shoot, you know, and so that's one of the nice things about commercials, you know. Whereas if you're on a longer project, a film, a narrative project, you're on it for a lengthier amount of time. And I think for filmmakers who are doing films and television, unless you're in the television space and you're working all the time, you really, you know, you're doing one job a month and you're going from you know, show to show to show, and really have no need or probably no desire to work in the commercial space. But if you're in the film space, you know, there's a lot of time, you know, between developing the film to actually the shoot, you know. So for directors, or a lot of time in between films. And so for directors in the film space, commercials can be a great way to make a living, you know. Like, so if you're, you know, up for a big pharmaceutical commercial, we'll say, and, you know, you can be in and out in 3 weeks and make $80,000, then that's a great living. You know, that's something that can buy you some time. You could be writing, you know, all of those things. So so what I like about commercials is that you're in and you're out. You know, but as a director, look, I love the narrative space as well, of course, and, you know, obviously looking to do more of it. And I'm also looking to move into the TV episodic space. So that's something that I aim to do as well.
So have you had any, or what kind of challenges have you had in the commercial genre in regards to being a Black woman? And what's your mindset in regards to navigating this industry?
Well, I think, you know, it is getting easier. It's not easy, but I think it's definitely getting easier as a woman, as a Black woman, working in the commercial space. You know, historically, commercials were directed by white men, and white men mostly still do direct commercials. But there's definitely been there's a shift that's happening where the needle is definitely moving a bit, where now advertisers are seeking out directors, women directors, and directors of color to tell their stories. So that's more and more now. And because the terrain, you know, there's so much content, you know, there's the broadcast commercials, but there's so much online content and advertising now that there's more opportunities for someone like myself as a woman and as a Black woman to direct short form content. And so yeah, I mean, I mean, look, the gatekeepers at production companies, you know, a lot of them, a lot of the company owners are white men, just to be honest. And a lot of the gatekeepers are white people. But what's happening is that in the past, where if you had a commercial featuring, you know, talent of color, Black talent, or what have you, you would, you know, white male director, you know, 9 times out of 10 was probably directing that commercial. But now there's more of a understanding and a push for diverse voices, and an understanding that representation does matter. It does matter that you hire a woman, because a woman's going to have a different sensibility than a man, you know, that you hire a person of color because they're bringing their sensibility to the work. And at the end of the day, that elevates the work. So yeah, there's definitely been challenges over the years and just being seen, you know, being seen. Yes, my work is seen, and my work, you know, has been validated, if you will, but it definitely has been a journey on being seen by the gatekeepers, you know, because the truth of the matter is, you know, the gatekeepers typically, or definitely historically, have always hired people or hired people who look like themselves. So when someone like myself comes along who doesn't look like them, and they're not used to seeing me in that space, you know, that has been challenging over the years. But like I said, I think definitely the landscape is such where that's changing. And also, as people of color, you know, a lot of us now have our own small production companies, and we've sort of carved out, you know, our own space in this terrain, you know, and doing content, you know, directly for clients, you know. And so yeah, that's definitely changing the game as well.
Okay. Can you tell us more about what the commercial directing diversity program is in your experience as a fellow?
Yes, the commercial director diversity program is an initiative that was formed by the Directors Guild of America and AICP, which is the Association of Independent Commercial Producers. And the initiative was formed basically to get more women and people of color into commercial advertising. And I was chosen a couple of years ago to participate in the initiative. And I was one of 6 directors chosen out of 400 submissions by a lot of talented creatives, talented directors. And, you know, and it was a great opportunity for me to be seen by advertisers. So, you know, I was chosen, and the program was, you know, basically you're doing workshops where you're getting to hear from different directors and executive producers and other creatives about what their process has been in the commercial industry. You know, because I come from commercials, you know, having worked in commercials on a production end for so many years, a lot of the information is stuff I already knew. But I was, but the program, the initiative was really valuable for me, and I got to do a spot out of it, a commercial spot that was really well received. I got publicity, I got attention, and that was something that I could tout. And so as a result of it, it definitely got me on the radar of a lot of ad agencies. So it was a great thing for me. So my whole thing is like, look, if you can get people to see you and see your work, and get great publicity around you as creative, then that's what you want. That's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. How do you know when you're ready to apply for that program?
I'm all about throwing stuff against the wall to see if it sticks, and I think that, as a director, if you've done some content, whether it's, commercials or some smaller sort of branded content, or you've done some short films or some narrative work, if you're a director, say you're a director, and so I think that, yeah, there are different degrees of experience, but I think you should apply if you have work to show, and because you may not have a large body of work, but there may be something in your aesthetic, in your eye, in your vision that gets the attention of, the committee, if you will. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, and one thing I'll say too to filmmakers who are looking to build their reel, and they may choose to do a spec spot or two, also look at what you've done in the narrative space and see if you can pull something out of your work. I mean, I've done that in the past. I mean, I don't currently have anything like that on my reel right now, where I took a scene out of a short film of mine and made a spec spot out of it, and no one knew the difference.
Wow.
So we have to be creative. We really have to be creative. If you're a documentary filmmaker, I mean, is there something that you can pull from the documentary work that you've done to create a spec spot, to sell something? You know what I mean? And so I would say probably most of the times you can. It's just really about thinking deeply about it, and seeing what could work. So to answer your question, how do you know if you're ready to apply? Apply. Just apply. If you have some work, then apply. You never know. Someone may see something in your work, and give you that opportunity.
Okay. So can you tell us more about your the movie Back to the Good Life, and just the process of writing to talent and getting this project on BET?
Sure. So Back to the Good Life is a romantic comedy that I did not write. The script was actually written by LaRon Tate of the Tate brothers. A lot of people know Lorenz Tate, the actor. Lorenz has a couple of brothers, LaRon and Lamar. Lamar Tate is an actor, a great actor as well. And so the short of it is the project came to me through my managers. LaRon, who was a co-producer on the film, he liked my work. He had seen my narrative work, and we broke bread and talked about the script. And I'd read the script a couple times, and I really brought to that meeting my own vision for it, and was able really to speak to the tone, essentially, of what I was going for. and just by, using examples of other movies, and so on. So yeah, it was a project that came to me. We shot in Atlanta. I live in Los Angeles. We shot in Atlanta, and that was like late last year, right before the holiday. And I had a great cast. It stars Kyla Pratt, who a lot of us know, who's a wonderful actress. London Brown, who's on the show Ballers. Kelly Jenrette, Lamar Tate, Estelle is also in it, who we know as a singer, but she's in it acting. So it was a great ensemble piece, and I was really grateful for the opportunity. And that was something that just came to me, and it premiered on BET this past spring, and I think it's also on demand as well, like Amazon. So you can check it out there as well.
Okay, that's dope. So who are some of your influences as a filmmaker?
As a filmmaker, who are some of my influences? Well, I really like I like Sam Mendes as a director. I really like his sensibility. He did the films American Beauty, Road to Perdition. I like his sensibility as a director. But in terms of just like really wonderful storytelling and just masterful shot selection. And I have to say Spielberg. He may be an obvious sort of choice, because he's so prolific. But when you really look at his body of work and what he's been able to accomplish, and he's just a really great storyteller, So I am attracted to filmmakers who are really great storytellers.
Mm-hmm. So you do have a workshop coming up. Can you elaborate more on what that is and where people can go to sign up?
Yes, absolutely. I am doing a 2-day weekend workshop in Los Angeles on October 12th and 13th, and titled Break Into Commercial Directing. And it is a workshop that will feature other directors and executive producers and just, decades worth of knowledge, if you will, to how to basically break into commercial directing. What do you need to do? What do you need to be thinking about as a filmmaker? And I really wanted to do a workshop like this because commercials has been such a foreign terrain for filmmakers. Filmmakers historically have been focused on film and TV and haven't known how to really break into the commercial space at all. And particularly women, and particularly people of color. The workshop is open to everybody for sure, but I definitely wanted to do something like this. And I think this is definitely a workshop that I think is a one-of-a-kind workshop, over the course of 2 days, where we're going to be, speaking to, how to define your brand, how to create a great spec spot, where we'll show you spec spots and tell you how much they cost to produce them. We're going to have a conversation on being independent versus being signed and the advantages or maybe disadvantages of both. So, I'm really excited about it. You can register by emailing commercialdirecting@gmail.com. Again, that's commercialdirecting@gmail.com. And you can go to my Instagram feed, which is at by Mika Mill. Again, that's at by Mika Mill, BYMIKAMIL. just one L. And you can see a flyer up on my IG about it. And so, yeah, my hope is that more filmmakers will definitely sign up and take advantage of this opportunity.
Awesome. That's dope. I really wish I could make it. I wish I could be in LA, but you said you might do more in the future. If,
maybe it requires a lot of time, and just in terms of preparation, and so it really just depends on the response I get in this upcoming workshop. If the filmmakers sign up and we max out our space capacity, then yes, I'll do it again. And it also depends on what my schedule is, and whether or not I'm working, I'm shooting on something or not. So we'll see. See. But hopefully it'll be a great turnout on October 12th, 13th.
And how many hours a day is the workshop?
The workshop is from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay.
With an hour lunch break in between, and some smaller 15-minute breaks in between the sessions. So, so it's not too crazy of a day, I don't think. So 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. both Saturday and Sunday in Los Angeles, in Burbank, to be exact.
Okay. So can you tell us about what Black Films Travel is?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for asking about Black Films Travel. Black Films Travel was co-founded by myself and my partner. And it's you can go to blackfilmstravel.com, and basically it's an online clothing store, but it's more than that. And it basically was founded to dispel the myth that Black films don't make money overseas. So what it is different merchandise, from hoodies to caps to T-shirts to tote bags, that basically says myth on one side, and the myth is to quote, Black films don't travel. And then on the back of the hoodie or shirt, it says truth. And the truth is a list of Black films and what they've made in foreign sales alone, only foreign sales. So it's just a list, a representation of just truth, and like, here are the films and this is what they've grossed abroad. So it's all about dispelling that myth. And, for me, that kind of messaging and that kind of really activism is really important to me. As a filmmaker, I always want to be in a position to empower other filmmakers and other creatives. And so Black Films Travel is another way, like the workshop that I'm doing on breaking edge commercial directing. Black Films Travel is another way that I'm endeavoring to do that. And so if you go to blackfilmstravel.com now, you can see, some of the merchandise we have, and see, films. And those aren't even all the Black films. There's just a select group of Black films and what they've grossed internationally. But the store is currently closed because we're actually going to be adding new merchandise, and we're going to have a very, very special announcement in 2020. So I'm really excited about it. So if you go check out the website, definitely come back to it next year and see what we have in store. Okay. And at the end of the day, it's all about, again, empowering other filmmakers of color to tell our stories.
Yes, indeed. Awesome. Cool. So thank you, Tamika, for joining us on the Black Film Space podcast. Really appreciate your insight, and looking forward to seeing what you do next in regards to, your project with Wanda Sykes and everything else.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Reggie, you guys are doing great work over there as well at Black Film Space. So yeah, thank you for taking the time. And
Of
yeah, it
course.
was great.
So where can I think you mentioned your Instagram already. Is there anything else that you wanted to drop where people can find your work or potentially contact you or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, you can. My Instagram handle, I already spoke to, and that's the best way to reach me via DM, to reach me directly.
Yeah.
But you can also go to my website, tamikamiller.com, and you can look at my work and read a little bit about what I've been up to.
All right, thank you, Tamika.
Thank you, Reggie. Be well.
Thanks for listening to the Black Film Space podcast. If you're interested in being part of our community and attending events, please visit us at blackfilmspace.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Black Film Space. Subscribe to our email list and podcast. All right, see you soon.